class. This is a somewhat quick rundown of the course syllabus and what to expect in the class. First and foremost, my name is Scott Munger, and this is Java Programming 1, if you haven't noticed. Now, we do have a little bit of information here. My room number is 220. I'm at the DeSoto Center pretty much every single day, barring viral lockdowns or anything. Uh, but even then, usually, if something prevents us from going to school, as it is as of the time of this video, uh, I will still try to come to work to my office at least once a week. Currently, uh, it is currently Wednesday that I'm usually going to school, usually about 12 to 2. So that is for anyone who has any questions or, you know, has any issues. Uh, if you need to contact me outside of office time, during a normal semester, I'm there pretty much every single day. Uh, During the summer or viral lockdown, I'll be there once a week on Wednesday at least. Uh, so, and if that changes or anything, I will personally let everybody know if it differs from this video. Now, my office number 6129. If you need to contact me, you could also contact the main DeSoto Center office and just ask for me, and I'm sure they can forward you directly to my phone. Now, that's not the easiest way to contact me though, because as you can see, if I'm not in my office, it may be because I'm teaching some of my classes. Generally, every semester I teach somewhere between 7 and 9 classes, usually. So I'm usually in class as opposed to in my office. But I do have 10 hours of office hours during a normal semester anyway. Uh, Although it usually ends up being somewhere around 14 or 15. But the easiest way, honestly, to contact me is either through email or through Canvas inbox. Either of those, and I should respond to you pretty quickly. It goes straight to my phone, it dings, provided I have my phone with me, which is usually the case, and I can respond to you fairly quickly. There is a text book that comes with the class. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm going to read page by page, but I will be following the content for the most part. Most of the class is lecture, not reading out of the book. The book is more of a support tool than anything. Uh, and I would encourage you to get it because I may post some challenge projects or extra practice from it, from some of the examples in the back and stuff like that. But here's the information on that. You can also get it on the course, the main website. They have a little listing for everything there as well. Now, a flash drive would be particularly useful, especially if you're in class physically. And I'm doing this video like it could be for anyone, so I'm trying to list all the possibilities here. Even if you're not in class, it's still particularly useful to have one to store all your information in. Now, if it is kind of small, so it is very easy to lose and misplace, and they do break eventually, especially if you buy the cheaper ones. You don't need some, you know, $300 flash drive if such a thing exists. They can get up to $60 to $100 though, for sure. But you do need something to hold your projects. We're going to be building programs in class, or through video if you're doing this online, or however you're doing the course. Here's how the class roughly works. If you're physical, you'll come to class, you'll sit in the chair with computer in front of you, and I will explain different programming aspects, and then we will actually open up the thing and build the programs. And if you're sitting there with me, you will also build the programs with me. If you are missed the class or you're doing it online, then there will be videos. Basically me doing the same thing. Either building a program or going over one I've already built. And then what you need to do is open up your own programs and start building it as well. Programming is very much hands-on. You really can't just watch somebody do it and expect to learn it. You have to actually physically do it yourself. So if, I have videos posted, and you just watch them, okay, that's nice. You're not going to learn that much. You have to physically actually put it together yourself. Then make a few changes. Adjust, play with it. That's how you learn things. If you're physically in class, I'll go over the material, and the videos will probably be similar, but not exactly the same because every time I go over stuff, I change it a little bit. So there'll be extra content kind of for you to go over. Now, a computer outside of class will be 100% helpful because the programming assignments, if you're doing this physically, in Java 1, the first few programs are relatively short and you could legitimately probably do them in class or right after class. But as we go further and further, that becomes pretty much impossible. You're not going to be able to do the programs in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, like the early programs maybe. So you need a computer at home with the software, which we'll go over later. Uh, but it's all free. You can just click download, install, and there's really not much to do after that except for use it and learn how it works. Now assignments will have 7 to 10 is what I post here, but generally it's going to be about 9. You'll have 3 assignments per chapter. Usually it is a 10, a 20, and a 30-point project. The 10-point project, the first chapter is a little bit different in that it's still going to basically amount to the same amount of points, but it's structured a little differently because it's the first chapter. So we can't just immediately build a program. So we have a couple of projects that kind of mean the same thing. But basically you'll have 60 points of assignments and 100-point tests, meaning that your basic course would be, 60% tests, 40% assignments. Now the way it generally works, the first project, 10 point, will be something fairly simple, straightforward, specifically over what we're talking about in any given chapter that we're in. The 20-point project will be, a little bit bigger, have a lot more parts, but it's still going to be focused on what we're dealing with in class. The 30-point project will be something that covers everything we've covered to this point. So it won't just include this chapter's stuff, but it'll include everything. Now, as you can probably guess, the farther we go through the course, the larger that 30-point project gets. The first 30-point project can be like 40 lines of code or something. The final 30-point project in Java 1 is somewhere between like 150 to 200 lines probably, depending on how you write it. In Java 2, the final project can be, I think the biggest I've had turned in is about 600 lines of code. So you can see it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, of course, that 600 line code program, once you get that far up, there are a lot of different paths you can take to do the same thing. That 600 line program can actually be 90 lines if you know how to program it right. You can do exactly the same thing in 90 lines of code. But we'll worry more about that in the future. For Java 1, really, I want it to work. I want it to look nice, yes, but the first thing in your mind should be make it work. Then you can worry about, shortcuts and better ways to do certain things. There's a anagram, KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid. You never want to make anything too complex, at least not the first go around. Now, tests, there'll be 3. Generally speaking, I always want there to be 4, but I can never manage the time. There's 2 tests and then the final exam. So actually, that's slightly wrong there. I'll have to fix that. So 3 tests total, each worth about 20% of the grade, I guess you can say. They're 100 points each. There are no makeup tests. If you miss a test, let's say if it's a physical class, the test will usually be on a Wednesday. You don't come, you get a 0. Now, if you know you're going to miss ahead of time, I can let you take it early. But after the test is given, you're not taking it afterwards. And I've had students come in Monday morning. I go over the test. And I'm like, hey, can I take the test? I'm like, no. I've had somebody say, well, I had to go to court, had a ticket. Well, first off, that's not an excused absence. We can talk about that later. But second, I would ask, do you know you were going to miss? And the answer is usually yeah. Then you should have said something. But since you don't get a drop test, or since you don't get a makeup test, you do get a drop test actually. So your final exam, and actually I need to fix that here. It's not your next exam, but your final exam can count twice. So basically, let's say the first test you missed completely, you got a 0, or you just failed it miserably for some reason. Uh, then, you do all right on the second test, you take the final exam, you get a 98. Well, then that first test you missed or did poorly on is a 98 as well. It can count twice and replace your lowest test grade. And the usual question I get when I mention that is, well, what if the final exam is my lowest test grade? Then it counts once instead of twice, so it doesn't hurt you quite as badly. But if you did all right on all the other tests, the final exam is much harder because it covers harder topics, but it's still covering a lot of topics you did in the first two tests. Now, required study time. Uh, Generally speaking, it's more of a rule of thumb, but I mean, for every hour you spend in class, you spend, at least an hour outside of class practicing or playing with it. I know it says 3 hours. That's a little excessive. It just depends on the person. Different people grasp things differently. Now, if you just watch people do it, it's nowhere near as effective as doing it yourself. The easiest way to learn is to open up a program and, you know, that we built maybe and start making changes. How do I do this? How do I do that? Do a quick Google search. And you'll probably find 3 or 4 ways of how to do this and this and this. Try changing some of them. Ask me questions. And I'm going to try to give some challenge assignments as well, for those who want to do some extra work or have some extra practice outside of what we're normally going to be doing. Now, the library does have computers you can use, and they do have the software, I believe, on them. If you wanted to go there, that's where that flash drive would be particularly useful. I think I mentioned tests already. It looks like I have that twice, so I'll have to fix that as well. Uh, Now, uh, grading wise, I think I told you 60% tests, 40% assignments. The grading scale is relatively normal. Uh, Actually, why does that say below 65? That should be below 60. Seems I have several errors on this I have to fix. This will all be fixed when you see it, so uh, don't mind this. I'm just using this to go over stuff. But 90 to 100 is an A, 80, 89 is a B, 70, 79, 60, 69. Below a 60, or I guess you'd say 59 and below, would be an F. Now, attendance, this strictly depends on whether you're physical or online or summer, fall, spring. Uh, Now, during a normal semester, you get, I think it's 2 weeks that you're allowed to miss of class. Uh, when I teach this, it's usually Monday, Wednesday, and you get 4 absences for those of you who are taking a Monday, Wednesday class. Now, you don't want to miss 4. 4 is not the goal, particularly in a programming class where we are building stuff every single day. And what we're going to be building, you're using those parts and pieces to make the projects. If you miss that day, you miss what we've gone over. I'm happy to mail out projects of stuff that you may have missed. There's also going to be videos of me basically going over the same thing. So it depends on whether you're physical or online. Online has less of an excuse since all the content's there, I guess. Uh, but still, you don't want to miss days, particularly in a programming class. I will say, historically speaking, when people get into the 3 and 4 absence range, their grade is probably down a letter grade or two in Java, just because they missed a lecture on how to do stuff. I had one guy miss one day where we went over a lot of things that we're going to be using in the next project, and he came back and he was just like, I have no idea what's going on. So don't miss if you can help it, particularly for a programming class. Now, of course, if you have to miss, that's what absence is for. If you have a problem, computer issue, if you're online, uh, however you're doing the class, your family emergency, that's all understandable. Talk to me. Uh, I'll be more than happy to work with you. But if you just, and this is one of my pet peeves in a class, someone just disappears. They were doing great, and then I don't see them again. Like, what happened? I had one guy, I think, just stopped coming, just disappeared, and I think he said he had some sort of job-related problems. So I'm like, well, man, why didn't you call me or something? We could have got you withdrawn. But this is back in the day where you stop coming to class, you fail it. So don't do that. And if you do have problems with absences or attendances, talk to your teacher, me, whoever. Uh, Now, online, the way it generally works during a normal semester is you have to turn in at least an assignment every week. Now, if it's a summer course, uh, which I'm going to be teaching as well, uh, let's see, I think it's going to be roughly, let's see, 2 months. I'm trying to do the calculations here, which I should have done beforehand in retrospect, but we have 8 weeks. There's normally like 14 weeks in a thing, so you have roughly about 2 weeks per week, I think. Uh, so I guess you'd probably get 2 absences a week, maybe, something like that. But I'll let you know specifically via message for those who, if the absence counts differs. I'll find that out. Now, uh, but once you go over absences, you're no longer in that course. So always, make sure you're there. If you're doing online, make sure you turn something in. This also goes with the assignments. If you turn nothing in, you get 0 points. So I think I mentioned this before, but assignment wise, if it's late, I'll still take it if it's a little late. 10%, I might take 10, 20% off depending on how late. Uh, when I go over the project, however, or post a solution, it will be a 0 and you don't get to turn it in anymore. Uh, it's better to turn something in that's worth some points than to not turn anything in at all, especially if you're online because you're going to get an absence. And absences quickly elevate to getting you kicked out of class. So make sure you're there. Now, of course, if you're on hello, there we go. My headset turns off after like 15 or 16 minutes if there's no sound being sent to it. Well, anyway, back to attendance. If you're on a team or something like that, those are official absences. Uh, Now, a lot of people seem to think that doctor's excuses and things like that count. I've had people say, "Hey, I got a doctor's excuse. Let me give you that." I'm like, "Well, you can give it to me if you want, but you're still absent." An absence is you not being there, whether it's for the doctor, whether it's to take your kid to school, whether it's because you slept in. Those absences are for those situations. You get sick. That's why you have absences allowed. You're allowed to miss 20% of the course. Once you exceed that, you've gone beyond what's allowed, and you get booted from the class. So, no, a doctor's visit or I had to go to court because of a speeding ticket. That is not excused. Now, if you have like military service, jury duty, or something like that, then yes, that can be excused. And there are a couple other cases like Northwest events, but those are the only ones. Now, if you're physically in a lab, of course, we will have computers in front of you for you to use. If you want to bring your laptop, that's fine too. If you're at home, then yes, obviously you need a computer to work on a computer class. I've had people message me like, "Hey, can I do this on my phone?" No, you can't. Or a tablet, really. You need an actual computer to do a computer class properly. Uh, Now, statement of authority. Basically, if you have issues in class, acting up, flipping over a desk, uh, disrupting class, you can be thrown out of the class. I never actually had to throw anyone out of the class and hope that never happens. Obviously, physically it's different than online. Online, I guess it would basically mean messages back and forth, inappropriate or something. Physically, like disrupting class. Well, I guess there would be some crossover there, but I've never had to throw anybody out, and I hope that never actually occurs. Now, plagiarism and cheating. Now, this is uh, something I should mention here. Uh, Now, I don't mind if you ask somebody, if you're physically in class or have a friend who's worked on some stuff, how do I do this? Or how did you do that? And they explain it to you. If they grab your keyboard and start typing, that's not allowed. If you grab their program and copy and paste, that's also not allowed. The way the class works is we build the programs, and then you take the test. Now, the test assumes that you know how to do the programs, how to read them, how to write the programs. That's what the test is going to be over. You'll actually have to write a program. If you turned in every single program, got a perfect score, and then bombed the test, it's more than obvious something's going wrong there. Also, I can normally tell if somebody copied somebody else's work. You can change the spacing or change some names and stuff, but logic is still logic. Everyone thinks a little differently. Everything puts things in different orders, you know. Uh, Oddly enough, it's usually the errors that stand out. Uh, I see someone made some weird error, and I see someone else made the exact same error. I put the programs side by side, and sure enough, even though there's some visible differences, they're the exact same program. If you get caught cheating, you and whoever else was cheating both get a 0 the first time. If it happens again, then you're no longer in the class if you're going to cheat multiple times. Uh, Now, if you cheat, you're only really going to hurt yourself because you're going to fail the test. If you didn't do the programming assignments, you're not passing that test. At least, if you have a vague understanding, you might be able to get a D, but that's not going to be enough. Most of the time, people who I've had who have not been able to do the projects fail fail the test usually. So if you're having trouble with that, ask for help. Don't copy. Copying may give you points. Maybe I'll miss it, but you're still going to bomb the test. And you have to understand how to do the stuff to make it through the course. And copying is not going to give you that understanding. ADA students, if you have any disabilities or anything like that, typically I'll get mails about that. There are some perks depending on what your disability is, how the department works with you, and what benefits you get. So typically people will have to sign stuff for that. Uh, but I'll talk to anybody who's an ADA student and we'll iron that out. If you're not, then you don't have to worry about that. Emergency procedures. Well, if you're in physical class, obviously these would kind of attribute to you, I guess. If you're at home, well, they'd still probably be a little worrying. In case of a fire at the school, physically, there would be a really horrible alarm, honestly. Uh, it's really so grating and annoying, you really don't want to stay in the building once it goes off. We've never really had a fire at the DeSoto Center, uh, but we've had the alarms a couple of times, had some practices. We had a science teacher leave a Bunsen burner on, I think, and someone burned some popcorn. Uh, but still, if there's a fire, we evacuate the building. If you're at the DeSoto Center, then we'll go out the hallway, and if there's fire in one direction, we'll go the other direction. If there's fire in both directions, we'll find a window, I guess. And how did fire get in both directions, honestly? It's probably not going to happen. If you're on fire, well, you can roll around on the ground and I'll stomp on you until you go out. And at the Soto Center, there's actually a lake in the back, too. You can jump in that. If you're at home and your fire alarm goes off, stop what you're doing and take care of that. Don't let your house burn down. Although more than likely it's just, something burned in the oven or something. Hopefully. If there's a tornado, well, at the DeSoto Center, there's a siren, and usually they'll come over the intercom, and you won't be able to hear them at all. You just hear a little muffle, and be like, what? And basically, we go down to the shelter. At the DeSoto Center, we have a concrete hallway, basically buried underground in the middle of the building, in the lowest floor, and we all hunker down in that. Uh, and relatively safe. I mean, it's concrete completely all the way around, so I don't think we'd be uh, too banged up if a tornado went directly over us. Probably wouldn't be pleasant, but still. If you're in your own house, well, go over it with your family. Hop into a bathtub, or that's if you have one of those old iron kind of metal bathtubs, or a closet or something like that. Uh, Typically in the middle of your house, not the edge, probably. But you guys should know your own homes and where to hide if you need to. That should already be rehearsed. If you haven't, rehearse it. Go over it with the kids and everything. Now, if there's an earthquake, obviously there won't be any warning. It's just gonna, rock and roll, and we'll all die. Welcome to the South. We don't build for earthquakes here. Every building will be nothing but rubble, if there's even a ground for it to stand on. We're 100 or so years overdue for a major earthquake, and it's eventually going to come. And when it does, there probably won't be much left. It'll be probably one of the worst disasters in history. So just something to look forward to. But if you feel so inclined to, try and survive it, find a good desk or, you know, something to hide under. If you are lucky enough to have a few shimmies, get outside, away from buildings, and you'll probably be okay, unless the ground opens up and swallows us all. If you're at the DeSoto Center, well, it depends on which floor you're on, I guess. Honestly, I think the top floor is the best because there are two floors of squishy people below us to break our fall. Uh, but being near a door, window, or exit probably isn't that bad either. With the bottom, well, depends on where specifically we're at, I guess. There's one room, 120, that's actually really nice because the exit's like right next to that door. The shelter's right across the hall. It's one of the best places to be in case of an emergency. Uh, but if you're at the bottom, well, you got two floors of people above you to squash you. So at least it'll be over fast. And that's roughly it. That is your kind of rundown of the course. Later, we'll talk about the software you need and have a little introduction to Java and programming and all that as it is. If you have any questions or anything, you can leave comments down below or ask me personally.